Welcome back to CHGO White Sox podcast. Joining you from our West Loop studios here in Chicago, Illinois. My name is Herb Lawrence. You can follow me on Twitter at EctorWall23. The guy to my left is Vinnie Duber. He is the CHGO White Sox beat reporter. And the last couple days, we've been having a little respite from White Sox baseball, which is awesome. And good to see that we can just talk about actual baseball, but instead of just getting into what this 27-71 team is doing on that particular day. But as you can see, we're without Sean. He is off today, but he'll hopefully be back tomorrow. On today's show, we'll be talking about Garrett Crochet and what he did last night in the All-Star game, and also about the All-Star game itself. Myself, I watched maybe 3 innings of it, and most of that was Garrett Crochet's performance. I don't know if Vinnie watched any of it. Our producer, Kevin Wells, who I didn't introduce, watched the whole game and had it on in the background the whole game, and so he's a baseball nut. But I'm sure you guys who are watching and or listening to this podcast are either sick of the All-Star game and or did not watch it at all. So we'll be talking about that and how they can...
You don't think anybody out there was like, man, I love the All-Star game, Herb?
No.
Herb, what are you doing painting everybody with the same brush?
I don't know how you could.
There's some big All-Star game heads out there, I'm sure.
That Texas stadium is just atrocious. I know they had to have a roof at that stadium because it's way too hot in Texas to be playing baseball like they did for like 30-plus years at that other stadium, at Arlington Stadium. But it is abysmal. They need some lights, some more natural light into that stadium because that was putting me to sleep. The broadcast, I don't like. I know that I'm on the minority when I talk about my guy Joe Davis. Puts me to sleep all the time. But I'll get into that, all this stuff, a little later on. Also,
Herb's hot. He's hot over the All-Star game.
We'll be talking about this White Sox team in the second half and what we expect and what will constitute success in our eyes for the White Sox. As we said, 27-71. There's not going to be a playoff run for the White Sox. They would have to win all the rest of their games, all the rest of the 64 games that they play in the second half. So we're going to ask ourselves, what would constitute success? And also, which players that we think are going to be brought up from the minors. And then in our last segment, we'll have a little fun with the over-unders, White Sox-centric. But, Vinny, we had some news over this All-Star break. The White Sox made a move, and it made it official today. Tell the folks what had happened.
Yeah, kind of out of nowhere. But Nick Senzel, who you might remember as a one-time promising Cincinnati Reds prospect, played for the Washington Nationals earlier this year, was released last week. Well, now he is a Chicago White Sox. They announced the news today. He joins the infield. My guess is he will be playing a lot of second base, even though he's mostly been a third baseman in his career. But we saw Lenyn Sosa get sent down to AAA Charlotte. Danny Mendick got designated for assignment. Those freed up the 40-man and active roster spots for Senzel. But the active roster, both of those guys were on the active roster, so there's going to be another addition to the active roster before Friday's game in Kansas City. Is it going to be Yoan Moncada? We'll see. Obviously, he's only a little bit into a rehab assignment, but he has been getting the reviews of his rehab have been very positive coming from the White Sox. So it seems like even though that was a very significant injury that he suffered in the very beginning of the season, he might be back very quickly here after the All-Star break. But even if it isn't on Friday, it'll be somewhat soon, and so that's why I think Senzel is probably ticketed for second base. Kind of weird, in my opinion. Yes. I guess the idea is, I did read today kind of what his contract situation is, and I believe that if he will be arbitration eligible next year.
Yes.
So if he's good for them in the second half and they want to keep him around, they can do so at probably a relatively inexpensive price. But here is a veteran guy who's been given a lot of chances. I believe this is his 6th major league season. Has never really clicked for him. A lot of injuries also in his past. Was the number 2 pick in the draft way back in 2016, but in terms of getting rid of Lenyn Sosa, literally getting rid of him off the active roster, not just kind of taking playing time away from him, but just straight up sending him down. I don't know how many folks were overly enamored with Lenyn Sosa, but this is the time to find out whether you got something in him or not. And certainly I think people would, across the board, agree that this is the best he's ever looked at the minor league, or at the major league level, rather, over the few, and again, small, but they existed, chances that he's gotten over the past couple of years.
A little bit of breaking news here from Ken Rosenthal. White Sox have designated for assignment Martin Maldonado.
Wow. It finally happened. Martin Maldonado is a former White Sox now. He can be picked up by anybody in the major leagues, and I'm sure he'll be picked up by a contender because the leadership and the defense is not there anymore. But, Vinny, your first blush impressions of Martin Maldonado being DFA'd now?
I mean, I guess what I would say is that they're using this time to realize that these veteran players aren't necessarily going to be part of the equation moving forward. Again, I'm curious as to what that means for who they put in behind him, right? Because we did see Chucky Robinson added to the 40-man a little while ago, and I think that's probably what they would do because Edgar Caro has not been at AAA very long.
No.
And he's a very young guy, and he always has been as he's moved through the minor leagues. He's been very young for the level that he's been at. I would be shocked if they determined him ready for major league action right away here to the start of the second half. So I would think that it would be Chucky Robinson. Martin Maldonado has objectively been awful this year. His numbers, both offensively and defensively, have not been good in the least. That being said, the White Sox kept talking about how they liked the one thing they brought him in here to do, which was work with the pitching staff. And so my thought was, even though he is not doing anything statistically of what anybody would want him to do, what does it hurt? You know what I mean? They're the worst team in baseball. They're not going to be getting better enough to compete for anything meaningful here over the last couple months of the season. So a little odd in terms of just the timing, but I guess I'm not surprised that the move itself happened because of the statistical output. But at the same time, I mean, he was apparently succeeding working with the pitching staff. So it's a little bit of an odd one. Obviously, just a report right now. We'll let you know if it becomes official. But, a little bit of an odd one to go along with the odd Nick Senzel news. So there you go.
And to speak about the Nick Senzel move as opposed to, like, sending Lenyn Sosa down, like you were saying, Lenyn's 24, 25 years old, and he was playing his best baseball as a major league player in this stretch of baseball. Like, now, was he lighting the world on fire? No, but as you were saying, this is the time to get him playing time and to replace him with a 29-year-old, now journeyman Nick Senzel that hasn't done anything with the bat. What do you think? Bringing him to the American League is going to all of a sudden wake him up, and now he's going to be the second prospect or the second overall pick for your team as a 29-year-old? It's a little far-fetched, but I get what they're doing. They're just trying to throw anything at the wall. If it sticks, cool. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul there for them. But I don't like that the parts that get affected are young players that possibly could be part of the White Sox future. And I know that the White Sox probably have, people they want to play over Lenyn Sosa because they've played him in the major leagues for years now. And he really hasn't shown that oomph, that extra, okay, we got it, Lenyn, you're that guy. And so they're probably thinking, yeah, he's good, but he's not great. And so he's like a 4A player. And so trying to get Nick Senzel started where he plays third base, second base, and some outfield, the versatility is probably also attractive to Chris Getz and company.
Yeah, and I just think about kind of what's the end game here, right? And I guess the end game is bring him into the organization, and if you can turn him around, he's tradable next trade deadline?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because this isn't a guy who would be, even if he's not under control long enough for him to have a late 20s career renaissance and be your 35-year-old third baseman on your next contending team, right? I mean, he's not under some sort of long contract like that. So, it is interesting. And like I said, the Maldonado report, interesting in terms of the timing as well.
Maybe they're trying to do the old Jerickson Profar thing where Jerickson was terrible last year as a Colorado Rocky, and then this year he is great and the starting left fielder for the American or the National League. So maybe they're trying to do something like that. They're just to be in a copycat league. Let's get to the actual All-Star game where Garrett Crochet threw 18 pitches last night in the fourth inning. gave up one hit, struck out one, who was Teoscar Hernandez, and had pretty much a clean inning. Went through 4 batters, 18 pitches, got through the inning. I know you didn't see the outing, but Garrett Crochet is just a beast out there. I think he was just throwing an easy 97. He wasn't even trying to blow these guys away. I think he could have if he really wanted to. Christian Yelich hit a weak ground ball to third. And so I think that these all-star games, and I'll get to a little bit more of it, they don't do it for me because, seeing Garrett Crochet last night, exciting for him because it's the first time he's ever been there. So the nod is great, and the history is awesome. But literally, the last pitch he threw was the last inning I watched of that game, and it was over. You didn't watch any of that game.
Millennial cord cutter.
Exactly. And so this is the problem with the All-Star game for me, where the game is very anticlimactic. There's not a lot of star power there. There's nothing really to do except for watching your player. And if you're a White Sox fan, you only have one a year usually. And so I think they need to do some revamping or just get rid of the game altogether. Name people the All-Stars. Hey, you're an All-Star. You get extra if you have a contract situation where it says you make more money. But otherwise, the game is boring. It's a waste of time. That stadium's terrible in Texas. Then won't be going back there. And I just think they need to do some revamping because the median age of people who are watching are older than me. And I know people who are younger than me ain't watching. So in 20 years, you're just going to have a dead game in the middle of the summer. And now I know the All-Star game used to be like the only thing that happens. The WNBA is much more exciting and now plays at the same time as the All-Star game. I literally turned onto the Las Vegas Aces and Chicago Sky game, and it was much better than what baseball's show plays game in the middle of the season was supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that you're talking about there in terms of viewership and, excitement and all of that, those are some of the things that baseball in general is having trouble with. It's not just this one game that needs to be necessarily retooled in order to increase those things. Those are problems that every baseball game is trying to solve, right? And so I think that's maybe a little harsh to put that on the All-Star game alone. But I think the All-Star Game's a good thing. I didn't watch it because I don't have TV, so that's my thing. But, I guess that's another issue. But, I have pretty fond memories of sitting at home and watching the All-Star Game and, some of the weirder ones that have happened and, some of those moments. I mean, come on, you get a Shohei Ohtani home run. That's what you want. And if you're talking about the All-Star Game, right? I mean, that's baseball's biggest star, and that's the thing that you want to see him do the most. And you get it right off the bat there. I thought Garrett Crochet pitched very well, and that should have been exciting for White Sox fans to see. But yeah, I mean, I guess what you're talking about is certainly valid. It's an exhibition game. Nobody's going 100%, and I think mainly too, baseball. The thing about baseball is that it's so many games all combined, right? So to just pluck one game out of it and pretend that that's going to be the most exciting night for the sport, I think maybe pointing to something like Field of Dreams game-esque where you could add some novelty to it. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the thing to do is like think about that kind of setting and then send the All-Stars there kind of thing. But again, that game counted for those two teams who were both in pennant races. Mm-hmm. I mean, that made a big difference, I think. So, listen, the NBA has the same thing. They basically stopped doing the Pro Bowl, right? Isn't the Pro Bowl just flag football now? Yeah. Okay, so the NBA has the same problem where it's always 250 to 249 every time, and it's like I don't think that this is a unique problem to the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. And one of the main things about baseball is that it has been going on so much longer than those other sports. It is that from the late 1800s to now, it's basically been the same story being told. And from the 1930s, 90 years ago to now, you've had the All-Star Game, basically every season, and it looks the same every time out. You can point to Hall of Famers in every single edition. I mean, there's something to that. You know what I mean? I mean, I think that the stuff that they've done, Alejandro brings up the Rickwood game. I mentioned the Field of Dreams game. They need to keep doing stuff like that to catch people's eyes. Absolutely. But the All-Star Game itself, it's been standing for so long. It's a through line all the way through the last 90 years of baseball. I don't know if it is in desperate need of being jettisoned like you're talking about.
And you brought up the Field of Dreams game, and after the White Sox-Yankees Classic, the Cubs and Reds ruined it, and it hasn't come back since. I'll never forgive you, Cubs and Reds.
Well, it just should have been a one-off to begin with.
It should have been.
That's the thing, is that they tried to do it again, and you're not going to replicate. I'm sure they already announced the fact that they were going to do it again before the game was even played. But still, I think moving it around, making it, I've said this before, making it Winter Classic-esque where you move it around, pick some new things to make it more novel, that kind of thing could be the thing that really gets eyes on baseball, and then you can still have the All-Star game be the All-Star game.
After this break, we will be talking about what the White Sox will be doing in their post-All-Star games. They got 64 left. How will they set up their rotation, and what constitutes success for this White Sox team in this second half? But Vinny, tell the folks about the great folks at Chevrolet.
Choose Ray Chevrolet as your first draft pick and find the new Chevy and price for you. Visit our partner this July to shop the Freedom to Save sales event going on all month long at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake, or do it at raychevrolet.com. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Plus, find the perfect tailgate vehicle. Right now, get $12,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 Chevy Silverado, or lease the new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $188 a month for 24 months. Or cruise into July your own way, or cruise into this July and then into August eventually, and shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see the very same when you shop Ray Chevy either in-store or online. But wait, there's more. Free oil changes when you mention CHGO online or at the service center. How can you beat that? Shop the Freedom to Save sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering the world-class product rated 5 stars with over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them perfect choice for all outdoor activities. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so they're bound to have a perfect pair to match your style. They also probably have a style in your team's favorite colors. As you see, I have on these black Shady Rays right now, polarized. I wear Shady Rays. Today I went over to the 606, and I was telling Vinny that a couple weeks ago, I was like, yeah, it's been around forever. And today, I was years old, that they call that is because of the zip code.
What's that? The 606?
606.
Yeah.
God, I felt like such an idiot.
Because all the zip codes in Chicago start with 606.
I felt so dumb. But I wear them while we're riding my bike because they're optical clarity, which is vital while I'm biking on these Chicago streets. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take a hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection of all eyewear. Every pair is backed by their lost or broken replacements. You don't have to love your shades. If you don't love your shades, exchange them for a new pair and return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with a personal and fast response. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head over to shadyrays.com and use our code CHGO for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Last year I did this read. It was 250,000 people. So, man, 50,000 more people have rated it 5 stars since the time I read it last time. But the White Sox have 64 more games left in this season. Their record currently is 27-71. So there's some doing. Now, they're on track to not have the worst record in baseball.
That is correct. Baseball history. Modern baseball history, yes.
If they continue how they played right now, which is bad, they will have, I think, 45 wins.
That is correct. 45 and 117 would be their record. That's what they're on pace for currently.
Pedro Grifol, I mean, whatever he needs to do, he needs to do it for this second half. And remember, we only have a couple more weeks until the trade deadline where we're expected a lot of these good players to be traded off this team. So there is a possibility the White Sox could be worse than they were in the first half. The second half preview, firstly, let me get into how Pedro Grifol and Ethan Katz set up their pitching rotation for this upcoming series versus the Royals.
I've got it right here for you, Herb.
Okay.
Give me 1 second to pull it up. It is Chris Flexen,
Ooh.
Jonathan Cannon,
Okay.
Drew Thorpe against the Royals.
Youngsters.
Then starting Monday, they get 4 games down in Texas in your favorite stadium in the major leagues.
Boring.
Eric Fetty, Garrett Crochet, Chris Flexen, Jonathan Cannon.
And the reason that Garrett Crochet is getting this extra rest because they're trying to save his arm. Firstly, he just pitched 18 pitches last night in the All-Star game, and so this is a way where you can get Garrett Crochet the extra rest that he needs, and also like the last time he pitched was that 2 innings versus the Pirates too. So
last Friday,
he'll have a long time between starts. I'm sure he'll throw some simulated stuff in between there to get his arm ready for that start versus the Texas Rangers. His last 2 times he'll pitch will be in Texas. It'll be great if they they won't trade him because the Texas Rangers don't actually have a chance to compete in that AL West. So
are you sure about that?
No,
they're right there, man. They've been hot.
Yeah, but I think the Mariners and, of course, the reigning AL West champions are all right there. And I know the Texas Rangers are the reigning AL champions.
They're the reigning
World Series champions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they do have a chance, but I don't see him going down there. Vinny, in your mind, what does Pedro Grifol and whatever is remaining of this 2024 White Sox team, what constitutes, hey, okay, they sucked in that pre-All-Star, but that second half, that was a success. What would constitute that in your mind?
Play better ball. And I don't mean win more games. I mean play better ball. I think the main thing that has jumped out as being a true, if you want to use the word failure in the first half of the season, isn't the fact that they lost all the games that they lost. We thought they were going to be bad. Yes. I don't know if anybody thought they were going to be this bad, but we thought they were going to be bad this year. What we heard all spring and even in the winter was that, now that we've changed the roster over, now that we're adding these guys, just you wait. The defense is going to be so much better. We're not going to make anywhere near the amount of mistakes that we made before. The approaches at the plate might be better. Everything is going to look better, even if the win-loss record is not reflective of that, right?
Yeah.
Because the direction that this team was supposed to be going in was improving from that mistake-filled play that we saw in each of the last 2 seasons when it was very disappointing, first with the 500 record and then last year with 101 losses. We haven't seen that.
No.
At least nowhere close to on a consistent basis, but I'm not sure we've really seen it very much at all. You can maybe point to individual players who have had a nice go of it, who have had certainly a lot of that's on the pitching side, but you can point to individual players who have done certain facets okay, but this is the worst offensive team in baseball. It is the worst defensive team in baseball. It is a team that has made a ton of mistakes all over the place, whether that's on the pitching, on the hitting, or the defensive side. To be able to play consistently more aesthetically pleasing baseball is, I guess, what we can judge them on over the course of the remainder of the season, because certainly win-losses is not going to be part of that. Not, what can they compete for? Even if they go out and play above 500 the remainder of the year, if they're still playing this way, what does that mean moving forward, right? So it's a little weird because you're in the early stages of a rebuild where you don't know how many, if any, of the players currently on the Major League roster are going to be part of that next great White Sox team, however many years down the road that ends up coming along, right? So, I don't know how much these guys can get ready right now. Pedro's talking about, to get ready for 2025 and spin something good into 2025. But is that going to be a season in which they're expected to contend for anything? So I think cleaning up the mistakes has got to be job number one. And I don't know if they can accomplish that because of the guys that they've had for the first half are going to be a lot of the guys that they have in the second half, minus some of the ones who are playing better, as you mentioned earlier. So, but that's something that I would say is probably toward the top of the list.
And yeah, for them to play better, and we have only a couple weeks for this team to be as it is right now. We expect some moves to be made before the July 30th trade deadline. They're going to be bringing up players, and we'll get to that in a second. So maybe that the players that they brought up are part of the White Sox way, and they're fielding a little better. They're hitting a little better. And I read your article a couple days ago about Colson Montgomery and the rest of the players you're bringing up. Like, this is the time for them to shine. Like, both Chris Getz and all the front office staff will be trying to improve this team through trades that they're training all these good veterans and then bringing back some young players. I hope that the success down there in the minor leagues that they've had this year, and I'll put those in quotes because the Birmingham teams had great success. Charlotte team not as much, but the overall organization is much better than they were last year, where they were all pretty much in last place, and there wasn't a lot of bright spots there. So I just wish the White Sox, as you were saying, the record doesn't necessarily matter. I would be rooting for more like history, that the White Sox be close to, if not the worst team in Major League Baseball. So I can say to my grandkids, if I ever have any, hey, I covered the worst team in Major League Baseball. Not I covered the 17th worst team in Major League Baseball. They had 45 wins. Yay, Grandpa, how was that? It was terrible, kid. Leave me alone. But I just want some improved play. Like, I want baseball IQ to improve. And as you said in your article, like, they promised better play, and they're terrible offensively, and they're absolutely atrocious defensively. So I don't know how they got better from a 101 loss team last year. They didn't. They just brought in a bunch of players. Like, if you're joining us late on the live show, Martin Maldonado was brought in when he got signed. Sean and I and Vinnie said, yeah, he used to be a good defensive player, but last year in Houston, he was not a good defensive player. And you saw what he did with the bat before this last little hot streak that he had, like three home runs in 4 games. That was just like a little too late. So I don't know what Chris Getz, Pedro Grifol, they see in what would be a second half that we would be proud of, what we can stamp our approval on and say, hey, yeah, that season in 2024 sucked because we had a bunch of losses. We lost over 100 games. But you know what? That propelled us to a better 2025. That little brief period where we got the end of July, August, and September, that propelled us to what we're doing in 2025, where, yeah, we're not competing, but we look like a better team. We look like a competitive team. We look like a team that is not the joke of baseball. We look like a team that is on its way to competing maybe in 26 or 27. That's what I think their hope is. And so I think that, yeah, getting rid of most of these veterans and then having players who know the Chicago White Sox way being brought up for these last couple months, I think that will be what I'm looking forward to the most. And speaking of that, in your article, you talked about, and you spoke to Pedro Grifol. What was his philosophy on bringing up players? You know, you hear the traditional September call-ups and all those things. And what is Pedro's philosophy on bringing up players in September or maybe in August? What does he think is more beneficial to the player?
Yeah, I'm not sure Pedro gets to make these decisions or make them by himself. Certainly, you know, I mean, these are Chris Getz's calls to make, and certainly with a ton of input from the player development staff. But Pedro, who used to run player development for, I believe it was the Seattle Mariners, back in the day, he says September's too short of a time to make these assessments on these young guys. They come up, they play for a month, they play 20-something games, right? And maybe they're really great, but that could just be a hot streak. Or maybe they're really bad, like Corey Lee was last year.
Oh, yeah.
But that could just be, you know, its own cold streak, right? And so he wants to see a little bit more if he's going to be actually evaluating and assessing and judging the readiness, the major league readiness of these players. And so he said it'd be beneficial to them, both the players and the team, bring them up in August. We'll see if anything happens that way, because obviously these guys got to be ready for that promotion, right? You got to have the horse before the cart, so to speak. But if they are, don't sit on them until September 1st, because you're only taking away time in which you can make the assessment on these players. Is that going to be Colson Montgomery this year? I don't know. Is that going to be Edgar Caro this year? I don't know. Probably have a little bit more likelihood with some of the pitchers. I do think Montgomery could be up certainly soon, because I think while the numbers maybe aren't so great for him down in AAA, they've seen a lot of him, and they were very excited about this kid ahead of time. So if they can determine he's ready from an approach at the plate standpoint and a defensive standpoint at shortstop, then we'd be talking maybe about him coming up before the end of the season.
Got to take another break, but after the break, we'll be talking a little bit more about the players that might be coming up for this White Sox in this post-All-Star game segment. But Vinny,
yeah,
you know the future's so bright. You got to wear Shady Rays.
You got to wear Shady Rays. Let's put on our rose-colored glasses, that's what the ad read says, mine are just black, and explain to the people why the future is bright for You know who I'm going to go with?
Who?
Hagen Smith.
Oh, wow. That's out of left field.
The White Sox White Sox made him the number 5 draft pick in the MLB draft just earlier this week, just mere days ago. And now he is probably ranked, or not yet ranked, but he sits among their most impressive and most important prospects. This is a guy who, while a lot of folks were surprised that they went with a pitcher instead of a hitter, this is a guy to be excited about. 161 strikeouts in 84 innings
Ridiculous.
at Arkansas this past season. He was the SEC Pitcher of the Year. This guy's really, really, really good. At least he was in college, and I think you can group him in with Noah Schultz and Colson Montgomery and Edgar Caro as guys who are the building blocks of what Chris Getz is doing moving forward. And I think there's some feeling out there from a lot of experts and people who have watched him that he could be moving through the system pretty quickly. I don't know if I want to put the Paul Skeens tag on him quite yet in terms of a guy going from the draft to starting the All-Star game in a calendar year, but he is a very high caliber player who could be here pretty soon. So put on your Shady Rays, of course. That was brought to you by Shady Rays. Head on over to shadyrays.com and use the code CHGO at checkout for 35% off Polaroid sunglasses like the ones that I'm wearing right now.
And you know the group Timbuk 3, the one that sang "The Future's So Bright, Gotta Wear Shades"? From Wisconsin. A husband and wife group.
Wow, a regular Ashford and Simpson, if you will.
Look at you bringing up some quality bands right there.
That was nice.
That is solid.
That was nice.
Like a rock. At Indeed, we're driven to search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and the matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with your candidates faster. And at Indeed, it doesn't help to hire faster. 93% of your employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibly at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard it on our podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions applied. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
You threw me for the same loop that you threw Kevin for, because you mentioned the state of Wisconsin, and I saw Kevin flash the Leinenkugels ad logo there, and I just assumed you were in a line he's reading. I turned my brain back on, and you were in an Indeed read, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
That was quite the head fake, Herb.
It was a bad segue. But yes.
For a minute, I thought you were going to say, like, Indeed was founded in Wisconsin. And I was like, wait a minute.
I'm sure it probably
was. Maybe they got a person there.
But we
love our friends at Leinenkugels, too.
Hey, they're great, too. They just don't have any sponsors today for the CHGO White Sox. But I'll be drinking some when they do. And after a White Sox game, I'll definitely be doing that. But if you go to Game Time, you can go to Guaranteed Rate Field and drink some Leinenkugels, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events that are near you. With killer last-minute deal, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Bought tickets at Wrigley for the Padres game earlier this year on Game Time. Went to all the rest of the secondary markets. None of them had a cheaper price than what Game Time had in the row and section that I was in. But if they ever do, like I did in Atlanta, I send that information to Game Time, they'll send me 110% of the difference into my app, because Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the views from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you get when you arrive. And all-in prices show you the total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without any of the hidden fees. And they're obsessed with finding you ways to help save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after that event starts. It's the place to go for last-minute seats. And with zone deals, like I did in Milwaukee, you get to pick the section. Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And as I was talking about, the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Before the break, we were talking about these young players the White Sox have in their system, which has been much improved from what it was last year. I think some people have them ranked in the top 10 as far as their farm system. And with all these players that they're going to be trading on this White Sox team, they're going to have to be replaced by some of these young players. We already talked about Colson Montgomery, who played in the Futures game this past weekend, played at third base there. Got on base a couple times. I don't think he got a hit at all. And Noah Schultz, who was down in Double-A, got rocked a little bit, but he's a Double-A. He's like, 18, 19 years old, so I'm not too worried about him. But what are the other players that might get a chance? We might be seeing a Brian Ramos again here on the Major League squad? Some of the players that you think might be replacing the players that will be leaving via trade?
I would look to the pitching staff more so than anything. And again, it's not going to be a direct replacement. It's not like if they were to trade Garrett Crochet, they instantly bring up one of their top prospects to take his roster spot or his spot in the rotation. But that being said, there's been a lot of success on the pitching side. You've already seen them promote Jonathan Cannon and Drew Thorpe, who are in the rotation right now, and Nick Nastrini, who's still who has been up to the Major League team a couple of times, but is still down there in AAA and could maybe see some more action before the year is over. Also keep in mind the two names, Kai Busch and Jake Eder. Those two guys have been promoted to AAA from where they started in AA. They've been having excellent seasons. Again, I don't know if they fly so fast that they make it here by September or anything like that, but those would be the two guys that I would look at first and foremost, apart from Colson Montgomery, who we talked about. When it comes to Brian Ramos, I don't know. He has not had a good go of things down in AAA. And you'll remember he played in the majors before he even played in AAA. Yeah. He was called up from AA basically because he was on the 40-man and they had an injury on the infield. He actually looked okay for a little bit. Then he got injured. He came back. It was no good up at the Major League level. They basically used that to promote him to AAA. They just did the same thing with Jake Eder, who was here for a day for the doubleheader and didn't pitch. But things have not gone well for him at AAA. I wouldn't be surprised if they want to see him accomplish a little bit more down there. And it really could be the same with Montgomery. But I just think that Montgomery has been there all season, has had a lot more time to check some of the items off the to-do list that they had for him at the beginning of the year. So I would look at Montgomery first and foremost, but Busch and Eder are two names that maybe would come up and get a little bit of a crack before the season's up.
And Chris Getz, does he speak about when he talked to you guys, I think last week, about what's his philosophy as far as when a player tells him to call up? As you said, it's not player leaves, bring up top prospect. Like, what is his plan in particular for a top prospect like Colson Montgomery, and why Edgar Caro's down there at AAA now, but more than likely he'll be staying at AAA because of his youth. Since Martin Maldonado got DFA'd, I know people be like, well, bring up Caro. That's the easy solution. I think they'll keep him down there at AAA and maybe even for the beginning of next year. What is Chris Getz's philosophy as far as bringing players up and get them to start their major league careers?
I mean, I think it's very similar to what you'd hear from anybody across baseball, and certainly what we've heard from a lot of people in my time covering the White Sox, whether it was Rick Hahn, whether it was Chris Getz when he was running player development, or whether it's the guy running player development right now, Paul Janisch. Heck, we even heard it from Josh Barfield when he came aboard last year after running player development for the Diamondbacks. It's really their philosophy comes down to this one sentence: the player will let you know. And I think it basically means we've got this list of things that we want them to accomplish. When they can start accomplishing that on a consistent basis and showing us they've mastered this, they've mastered that, and they're showing it every single day, that's kind of when it's like, all right, it's time to move them up and give them the next level of the challenge. Something that everybody says is you don't want to rush these guys and get them here when they're not ready. And certainly a team in the position that the White Sox are in right now are not going to be making any moves based on what is needed at the major league level. If they were in a pennant race and Colson Montgomery can give them a little bit of an oomph to get them the division title or get them past a round of the playoffs by being a bat off the bench even or something like that, that's a different story. The White Sox are the worst team in baseball. There's no need for Colson Montgomery to be here at any specific time, right? Let alone right soon in the next couple of months. So I think you got them watching him very, very closely. They're not going to tell us, the specific things that they want him to do so we can watch and say, all right, there's that. Why isn't he here? But I think that it's very much apparent to them, even if it's not apparent on the stat sheet that we can look at, the things that they've asked these players to do. Once they get over those individual humps, it's apparent to them that they're ready for the major league level.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to when they bring up these players, and I hope Colson Montgomery will be part of that. And I kind of agree with Pedro. Give him 2 months. Give him a full go at it. And whatever they do, cool. Have success for 2 months? Awesome. You got something you can lean on in the offseason and say, hey, I belong here, and have the confidence that you do belong here because you did the job. You struggle for 2 months? Man, Major League Baseball is tough. I need to do this, that, and the other to get better. As you were talking and you made the comparison to what Corey Lee did last year, where he was just really bad with the bat as far as the White Sox. I like his leadership last year, but he came back, retooled the swing, and now, the stats are not eye-popping, but you watch the player. The player is a Major League player. If that's just a backup for 10 to 12 years, cool. But what Corey Lee does works, and what he did in this offseason made himself that backup catcher. Because if you can't hit, as we saw with Martin Maldonado, you're not going to be on a team after a while. And so it doesn't matter how much leadership you got and how much they like your leadership and how well you work with the pitching staff. You can't hit as a catcher. Like, you can't hit under 150. It's going to be time for you to leave. And Corey Lee has improved himself. So I'll be looking for Colson Montgomery, as you're saying, Jake Eater, maybe even Nick Nastrini getting another shot, even though he has not done the job for AAA Charlotte himself.
What about the two guys that you're looking to trade right now? Chances are if you move one of those guys, you're going to get a high-end prospect that's ready to go and be Major League ready by that trade, too. So there could be a mystery player X in there, too, that you might be able to look forward to if you move a guy like Luis Robert. I mean, you're not moving him unless you're getting at least one Major League level player, right? Or Major League ready player.
I mean, we'll see. I think those guys,
exactly.
If you're talking about already at the Major League level, those guys tend to get thrown into deals. You think about Steven Wilson, who was included in the Dylan Cease trade. Yeah. But a top prospect, again, though, the White Sox are in a position where they don't need to be good in 2025, right? They're maybe shooting for a few years down the road. The headliner of a deal for either of those guys, and we're talking strictly hypothetically, of course, could be a guy who's in low A right now. Like, that fits the White Sox timeline. Sure. So I think that there are players out there who would be at the top of farm systems who are banging on the door because they're in AAA. Maybe the White Sox have a spot for them that the team trading doesn't, right? And so that certainly is a possibility. But I also don't think that folks should be out there thinking that the only way that a trade for one of those guys gets done is if the guy who headlines the trade is able to bat third in your lineup the next day, because that's not necessarily the case for a team that's in a long-term rebuild like the White Sox are.
And to answer the question by one of our commenters, Drake, he asked, don't want to dampen the great news, but who goes in if Lee needs a day off? Carlos isn't great. He's talking about Carlos Perez, who's also in AAA. As Vinnie also said earlier, Chucky Robinson is already on the 40-man roster. More than likely, that is the easiest move. That definitely is the easiest move for the White Sox to do. He's been a journeyman minor leaguer for his career, so he'll be probably the backup catcher for the White Sox, if I'm just guessing offhand right now that Martin Maldonado got DFA'd. But let's have a little over-under fun. The White Sox, as I said, have 27 wins. There's 64 games left. Over-under, Vinny. 44.5 wins for this 2024 Chicago White Sox team.
So saying over would be the pace that they are currently on.
Correct.
Because they're on pace to go 45 and 117. So if they just play the exact same kind of baseball they've been playing and win at the exact same clip, the over is the answer there. I think I'm going to say over just because, and I don't know if it's going to be much over, but I think I'm going to say over just because that's the clip. I'm hesitant, though, because if they're able to make these trades,
yes,
this roster is going to be worse.
Yes.
Yes. Whew. So there's that. But let's also think, how many games have they won that's been, that have been pitched by these guys that are actually good that might get traded, right? I mean, like, they've lost a lot of games that Garrett Crochet started too.
Yes.
So I'm going to say over, but I'm going to say barely. Like 45-46, that kind of barely.
I'm going under. Yeah, like I more than likely think that Garrett Crochet will still be part of the White Sox, but probably in a diminished role from what he was in the pre-All-Star games. So he won't be pitching, I think, every fifth game as he had pre-All-Star game.
Not as much.
Exactly. And so that you won't be getting that bump. Eric Fetty, more than likely, in my opinion, is going to be gone. So that'll be another pitcher that you have to replace, and that's one of the best pitchers in the American League. Same with Garrett Crochet. So you're going from top level to, at best, a minimum, a replacement level pitcher, if not worse. And so, yeah, as we already talked about, they have the worst offense and the worst defense in baseball. I don't know if it's going to be improving by bringing players who are younger. Hopefully it does, but I will go under 44.5 wins for the White Sox this year. I don't think they set the record for the worst team in modern day MLB baseball, but I'll be rooting for it. Not because I'm a hater, just because I said before, there's nothing better than saying that you covered the worst team in baseball history.
Herb, to match that record, which is the 1962 New York Mets, 120 losses. So to match that loss total, they would have to go 15-49 the remainder of the year.
No way that happens.
That's not out of the question. They've already played the Marlins. They've already played the Rockies.
But wait,
they got to play the A's still.
Twice.
No
Kevin's
way.
Kevin's reaction is no way that happens. Kevin, their current pace is only to be 3 games better than that.
And their worst players are going to be
that.
on the team. Imagine what you said. If they trade Crochet and Robert, who are they replacing these people with?
Like, why is 18-46 realistic, but 15-49 is not?
No, I don't think either are. I think they'll win over. I think they'll finish with closer to 50 wins.
Yeah,
it's really hard to play 2 halves of baseball like that. They're going to bring on guys who are going to be hungry to win and play. Pedro maybe manages a little bit better because he's managing for his life. No,
Kevin is
15 wins in a second half of the. Man, I don't believe
they have 27 right now. They played 98 games.
Yes, they played.
They're bad. They're bad, but the 15 wins that'd be obscene. Hey, but you know what? Don't put it past them, I guess.
And for those watching or listening, Kevin is a Cub fan, so he has optimism running through his bones. I don't think he's watched a lot of 2024 White Sox game. I appreciate it. It's everybody who's behind the producer's chair, always optimistic about the White Sox. Sarah, big time optimism about the White Sox. Lawrence, our guy Lawrence Bedell, he knows. But Kevin, I appreciate it. I'm sure the White Sox appreciate your optimism.
I wouldn't call me optimistic, but I think they'll win over 50
wins.
games. Though I mean, they'll get close. I do have a bet with your boy Ernie Scatton though, and my friend that the White Sox wouldn't win 65 games this year. So
I mean, that's
$20 in the bank. He got so mad at me. For that. He goes, "What do you mean they're not?" I'm like, "They're not going to win 65 games."
Cash that. Tell Ernie to pay you out early. Here's another over/under. Sox MLB players traded from now until July 30th. I have it at 7.5. Over under 7.5 MLB players traded from this White Sox roster.
I'm going to say over.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that because I think you can come up with half that out of the bullpen alone. And then all you need to reach that number is like 3 or 4 other ones, and there's a few. And certainly there's a guy on the starting rotation in Fetty who's almost, who would seem like a near lock to get traded if the conversation nationally is correct. And then Chris Flexen, who's in the rotation, is a candidate to go as well. So I think you could see basically what you saw last year, which was everybody that got traded was a pitcher for the most part. I think you could see that mostly again this year, but I think there are a couple position players that could go as well. I'm still of the opinion that Robert and Crochet probably will be here after the deadline, but that doesn't mean that they still can't trade 8 guys.
I think I'm probably just to be a contrarian. I wrote down the players I think are definitely getting traded, and like you said, there can be players you could add. I did not put Tanner Banks on this list, and that guy with the left arm, and he's been doing very well for the White Sox, very well. But it's like a 4 ERA.
Consistent though.
Somebody will be looking for him as far as trading. Tommy Pham gone, Fetty gone, Flexen gone, Lopez gone, DeJong, Brebbia, and Kopech. I have those 7 guys 100% gone. And like I said, maybe you got Tanner Banks. Maybe somebody's looking for Justin Anderson. et cetera, et cetera. If Steven Wilson comes back up to the major leagues, I think he'll be looked at as a player that somebody definitely would want. He's got like a mid-3 ERA. Still don't know why he got sent down, but I know it was more of like a logistics thing. Somebody had to be sent down. He had the options to be sent down, so he got sent down. So I'll go under my 7.5, but I think it's more of they don't have not the time, but it's a lot of players to go in 2 weeks.
Again, I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. Just because you're trading somebody off your major league roster doesn't mean that it has to be an overwhelmingly great return. I mean, they could trade Justin Anderson and get cash. You know what I mean? They could trade Tanner Banks and get a player to be named later. You know what I mean? Like, these aren't necessarily going to be moves that create headlines or create building blocks for the future. Maybe they're just lottery tickets. I mean, last year, Keenan Middleton. Do you remember who Keenan Middleton was traded for?
I do. Juan Corella.
Yeah. And he's actually okay. But still, the point being that nobody at the time was like, oh, add him to the top 100 list. Here we go. Like, so there are going to be these deals that get made that aren't headline news, so to speak.
All right. The last one I have, the White Sox have been shut out 12 times in the pre-All-Star games. I have the over-under at 18.5.
By the end of the year
total.
total.
By the end of the year total. Vinny, over-under 18.5. Shutouts, getting shut out by the White Sox.
I'm going to say, so that would be what, 6.5 more?
Yes.
Than they currently already have?
Correct. In 64 games.
Oh, boy. I want to say under because I want to say that most of those
early.
Came all in the same stretch of the season.
They did.
And they were really atrocious at the start of the year. I think that once you even out, even if you're not good, not good evening out is going to prevent that from happening with that sort of frequency.
Yeah.
But also 6 doesn't seem like that many more over the course of once every 10 games. Yeah.
And
I don't know.
And I think I'm going under, even though I set the line. Because, like you said, those came in every single series they started the season with, they got shut out in each one of those until I think the streak went last into the 8th series. And so in those times, you didn't have full Moncada, you didn't have full Eloy, you didn't have full Luis Robert, and you had a diminished lineup. So that's why they're running into all the times that they got shut out. And then recently I
feel like they've had 10 in before the end of May.
It was a lot. And it was just every time they would go out for a series, shut out in one of those games. And more than likely, we talked earlier, Yohan Moncada will be coming back to this team. And hopefully, Luis Robert will still be part of this team in this whole second half. And I don't know if Eloy Jimenez will be traded by, or picked up by somebody, because that's a lot. And I think it's very hard to pick up Eloy Jimenez and then have to pay him to go away after the season is over, because I think you got to pay $4 or $5 million for his option to be declined.
A buyout.
Yeah. And so, I think that having those players on the team, even though Moncada and Eloy are not the greatest of hitters, they'll still produce better at bats than what the players who were taking their spots earlier, like the Robbie Grossmans of the world, were doing early in the year. Yeah.
Traded him.
World champion. And then he's like, yeah, let me go to the White Sox. And he's like, the Rangers bring your ass back here, man.
They got something for him.
They did. That's amazing. Something actually they can work with. And a dude with a long-ass last name. And if he makes the team, he'll be the longest last name ever, right?
I believe that's correct.
Just a long-ass name. I forgot his name. It's something
doesn't
Marcus
he go by
Tuiasosopo.
He goes by Bubba, doesn't he?
Oof.
Because his first name's very long also. So I think he goes by Bubba.
He'll have to curve his last name over the jersey like Pro Armstrong. It goes like a loop.
Yeah, fanatics will be like, I told you, smaller letters.
It'll be more like it won't be an arch. It'll be just a full circle. I'm gonna have to go down under the number.
Hey, you said off the air, you said those uniforms you like for the American League, and where it's kind of stacked American League.
I know everybody hated them. I thought they looked cool.
How about in the back? You stack his name. Yeah. You stack his last name, one part on the top and the right
just a hyphen.
Yeah. And then the bottom part is there.
Continued below.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. And, Drake, I do not know if you can trade for international pool. I'm sure you can, but I don't know 100% if that is true. But I appreciate you guys all joining us in the chat. Drake, Robert, Alec, blank name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin?
Yeah, so the bet I'm going to make.
Yes.
They have to win over 15 games or over 18 games? What did I? They have to get to.
You said they're going to win
close to 50.
Over 50.
To hit the modern loss record of 120, they would have to go 15-49.
You said they're going to go over 50 wins. They're at 27.
I said close to 50 wins. That's
okay.
I don't know, somewhere around.
So you
there.
need 18 wins.
Okay. All right.
No, 23 wins.
23 wins. Sorry.
Yeah, to hit 50
over the next 64 games.
All right. I'll buy your favorite po' boy from across the street. We'll do a little favor.
I'm telling you, yeah, we could bet that right now. Yeah, if I think the White Sox are not going to get close to 50 wins, so I get 49 below, right, and you get 50 above. Does that work? I'll even give you odds. 2-1.
Give me above 48.5.
Take it.
All right.
Absolutely take it.
I think it'll be within a game or two.
Yeah. So that's our producer, Kevin Wells. He's been joining us. He's very optimistic on the White Sox. He's a Cub fan. Probably very pessimistic on them, even though they're 3.5 games out of the wild card. That is Vinnie Duber. You can read his articles on ALLCHGO.com. He has a lot of great articles. You catch up with all the trade rumors. He keeps on updating that. So go to ALLCHGO.com and follow Vinnie at Vinnie Duber on X. Myself, Herb Lawrence, Ectorwall23. I have nothing that I'm doing on my X except for just talking nonsense. So, but you can follow me there. Sean Anderson, who's usually here, will probably be back tomorrow. So we'll have a show previewing some things, and we'll be doing our top 10 show.
Our top 10 show is tomorrow. Yes.
Top 10 White Sox games of all time, judged by us three. So you do not want to miss that one. Guess which one's the number one? We all have disagreements on which game is number one. So join us tomorrow, 5:30, same bat time, same bat channel, right here on YouTube. CHGO White Sox signing off for tonight.
We all silly like the mayor.